Welcome back. Crafty Creations through Culpeper County Parks and Recreation. I'm Samantha. Glad you're with us today. And we're going to do something that is so basic, so simple, but we're going to make pretzel bites and another simple homemade German mustard. Oktoberfest kind of comes to mind, and something to look forward to late September into October. And pretzel bites, or pretzels, soft pretzels dipped in mustard, nothing better. These are so simple. You can do them with minimal things and items. I just have a bowl, mixing bowl, something to mix with, wooden spoon, something sturdy. And you will need your oven to boil water, and well, I guess you could use a microwave if you want, and melt butter, whichever you prefer. Back to the oven, you do need to bake them, but nonetheless, you just need some self-rising flour. That works best because it has the baking soda in there. You can add that and some salt into just plain flour, but you would have to research the quantities. So that's why I say it's easier if you just get self-rising flour. And you're going to need Greek yogurt, and it could be full fat, fat-free, but just make sure it's plain. You don't want vanilla flavored, but Greek thick yogurt. And that is pretty much going to be it. You have your baking soda, your yogurt, and your flour. The recipe that you will see included in this tutorial is referred to as a 2-ingredient dough: self-rising flour and Greek yogurt. And it's pretty easy to remember the amounts. It's a cup and a cup. So let's get started and make our dough. Make sure you have a surface that you can roll things out on, and have your baking sheet ready to go. And your oven should be set at, I believe it's 425, because once they are done, you will pop them in the oven for 7 to 15 minutes so that they crisp and become golden brown. And at that point, you would add some butter and coarse salt. This actually makes cleanup really easy. It's parchment paper, not to be confused with wax paper. Wax paper is not designed for oven use, but this is, and it's heat resistant, and it's great because once you remove your food items, cookies, breads, whatever, you can just take and throw away the paper, and minimal cleaning on your baking tray. Plus, it's a good nonstick surface as well. So have that ready, and let's get started. Let's open up. We're going to have our Greek yogurt, our self-rising flour, and I'm going to take a cup of each. Actually, it is a cup plus 2 tablespoons. Let's see here. Do this so I can scoop. Actually, let's see, this is the third. Okay. Usually I like the scoop and forget what it's called, the scoop and the when you do this sort of thing so that you have your cup of dry ingredients. But I'm going to eyeball it for now. Let's do that. All right, so you've got a cup of flour there, and get your this. You need plus your 2 tablespoons. Scoop and sweep. That's what it is. There you go. All right. There's one there. And then one there. Okay. All right. So that's your flour. And then you want to take your cup of yogurt. I'm just going to stir this just so it's not so liquidy here of your Greek yogurt. Okay. And you need a cup of your Greek yogurt. All right. About right there. Okay, go ahead and put that in. Okay. And guess what, folks? That is it. That's going to be your dough. Now, if you wanted to embellish it with something like a garlic powder, you certainly could. But I think if you just want a basic dough, this is what you're going to start with. You can top it and season it, to me, after it's been baked. Okay, now this is the important part here. You definitely need a clean, floured surface. I'm going to put a little extra there because it will be sticky and you want to make sure your hands have access to flour. So, here's what we'll do. Let's put that there for now. Okay, move this aside. Okay. Okay. Now at home, of course, I would, probably kind of a bit messy in the kitchen, I freely admit. It's kind of fun. It's very satisfying to clean everything up when you're done, but in the process, I don't know that I'm one of those that clean as I go along, but that's a very good trait, I think, to have. But I will try not to make a mess here in the studio. So, take your dough, as much of it as you can get. Let's put this here. And basically, you're just going to start kneading this. Okay. All right. So once it starts to incorporate and come together, it's not exactly like a traditional dough, and it's certainly not a traditional pretzel dough, because obviously with pretzel doughs you use yeast and you would have to have it proof, and there are a few other steps that you would take. Still easy, but this is even easier, and I think the outcome is just as delicious and not so much like a traditional pretzel, but it's certainly very close, and again, certainly right out of the oven, they're delicious. Okay. So, just going to do that. Now, once you have successfully shaped this into a ball, you're going to keep kneading it just slightly. Put that there. Like so. But you'll see that, it does tend to crack slightly, but we're not going to manipulate this too awfully much, but I do want to make sure I feel that it is consistently wet to touch and somewhat together. If it were too sticky, you could certainly just add more flour. If it went the other way and it was not too sticky, which would be kind of odd, but in that sense, just have a little bit of yogurt and you can add that into your mix. So, I'm going to do this a few more times. Get this into about this size here. You're going to take a knife and you're going to cut it into quarters. Okay. All right, so you have 4/4 here. Okay, then we're going to keep your knife handy there. You've got your tray ready there. All right. One thing I did forget to do for purposes of here in the studio is you will need to have some boiling water ready, because once you have cut your dough and it's ready to go, you will actually want to dip it in a solution of baking soda and water. So let me at least get that going here. About a 1/2 cup to a cup of water is what you will need. I'm going to get that going there. Back to the dough. All you need to do is just roll this out like so. You're going to make a nice log, and you're going to cut it into approximately 10 to 12 segments for your actual bites. Now you could shape again this dough into the pretzel, which basically, if you wanted, cut that in half and then roll it out a little more, make a U, and then make the traditional pretzel shape. But today we're just doing bites because it's simple and yummy. Okay. And as you need to, again, have your flour available. And everyone is, going to do this a little differently, but I start by cutting it in half, and then you cut it into segments, like so. You can cut them thinner if you'd like. I don't really use the edges here. Okay. And then just set aside. Got our water going. Take here, and what you will need to do is get your baking soda solution ready, and that is going to be 1 tablespoon. Now the baking soda that you're essentially going to dip the dough in is basically going to keep it from puffing too much and give it that, it will impart some flavor, kind of that pretzel-y flavor that we think of, as well as help to brown and give it that crust. And as I said, you bake between 7 and 16 minutes. It's not something that you want to pop into the oven and leave. You need to make sure you set a timer and you take care of looking into it. Okay. All right, so just make sure. 1 tablespoon of baking soda in there. Got that ready to go. What I will use to do this is a slotted spoon. That works really well. Now, of course, in your kitchen, you've got, if you're like me, you've got your island, you're preparing everything, you can turn around and you can wash your hands. But I'm going to proceed because basically this is so easy, and I think you should be able to adapt this to your home very easily. All right. So once your water comes to a boil, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to pour this in to my baking soda. You'll have a slight reaction there. Okay. Give it a stir. Okay. And essentially, you're going to take your pretzel bites and then put them, once they've been bathed in your solution, go ahead and put them on your prepared baking sheet, like so. Now, you don't have to make yours this large. You could make them smaller. You could certainly Cut them more like this size here, for a nice little pretzel bite. Put 2 in at a time, right out like this. Okay. All right, and you want to make sure you try to keep, you know, the base there on the bottom. But pretty much this is it, and you continue. Yeah, that one right there is perfect. That's what you're looking for. But essentially you're going to continue. You've mixed your yogurt and your self-rising flour, a cup of the yogurt and a cup and 2 tablespoons of your self-rising flour. Mix that in a bowl, take it onto your floured work surface, get it into a shaped ball, cut it into quarters. It just makes it easier if you do that in order to cut and portion into shapes. Take each quarter, roll it out into a long rope, cut it out into sections, and dip it into your bath of water and baking soda. Put it onto your tray, pop it in the oven, 425 degrees Fahrenheit. Keep an eye on it between 7 and 16 minutes. And we're going to take a short break, and we'll come back so that you can see the end result, and then we'll make a mustard, a dipping mustard to go with our pretzel bites. And we're back. So you've mixed your dough, you've prepped, cut, you've dipped into your baking soda water solution, you put it on your baking pan, put it in the oven, and so as I'm repeating myself, you are now ready to see the end result, which essentially is, you know, it's kind of crusty on the bottom. These have been sitting out a little bit, so they're not quite a perfect representation of what you will find. And these could have gone a little longer and brown. It's the type of thing you don't need to worry too much about it burning. It should be okay with 425. Just keep an eye on it. And you have your pretzel bites. They're delicious when you take them out of the oven. So there you have it. And what I want to do now is move on to, just as you have something that's very basic, 2 ingredients, you whip it up in no time and you bake it, boom, you're done, is a basic mustard. Now, of course, most of us have a fridge full of condiments, and you know, you can use just about anything you'd like. You can use prepared condiments and make your own mixtures of things like, you know, Dijon mustard and mayonnaise, a cheese sauce, pretty much anything. Or you could make them sweet, and you could put, instead of topping them with a coarse salt or garlic salt or anything like that, you could use cinnamon sugar. That would be just as great. Dip them in chocolate. But again, just thinking in terms of, you know, feeling fallish and thinking of Oktoberfest, we're going to do just a very basic homemade mustard. And all you're going to need is some butter, a little bit of flour, dry mustard, not prepared, and milk, white vinegar. That's pretty much it. That is a very basic base that you can use, and you can throw things in there that you'd like, maybe a little bit of horseradish to make it hot as well as sweet. And now that I mentioned sweet, here's one thing that I will say, and I have some, I have some that is made here. This is essentially what it's going to look like. It has that nice creamy texture. And this is after being refrigerated overnight. And just like with salt and pepper, you can sweeten this to your liking. This has, as the recipe that you will see or have access to, only has about 3 tablespoons or so of sugar, which is not a lot. So it's going to be a very tart mustard, which is something I like, but you can make it sweeter. And I would say go for it. You could even go as much as half a cup of sugar. And as you're making it on the stovetop, you can actually, you know, you want to taste it. Know that once it sits overnight, the flavors will begin to blend and age so that it will have a more pronounced mustardy flavor. It's just like if you did something more complicated with, you could do the same if you didn't have dry mustard. You could take the mustard seeds and you could soak that. And there's a variation that you could use to make. But keeping it simple, go to your stovetop, and I'm going to have, in lieu of a whisk, I have a fork. I think this is going to give me the movement that I'm looking for. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. I'm going to heat up a couple of tablespoons of butter, 1 to 2, not a lot. Oh my goodness, I did forget. We need to back up. The pretzels, once they come out of the oven, you take your melted butter and you're going to give them a coating, a generous coating of butter, and then put your coarse salt on. And by all means, make it generous, because the dough is unseasoned, so that salt is really what's going to make a difference when it comes to seasoning. This is something I just happen to have at home. It happens to have the coarse sea salt, as well as garlic and onion, and it's delicious. Do not use it sparingly. Top your bagel bites. Back to the mustard. So as we have this working here, you want to take about a tablespoon of butter or flour. Add that to your melted butter. And this is when you want to take, like I said, I think a fork to me works better. And then incorporate that into your melted butter. Until you're satisfied there are no lumps or such. Okay. Make sure you've got the heat low. To be a portable burner, I tell you, this does heat up phenomenally here in a short period of time. I guess I shouldn't complain, but let's turn that off. I mean, it puts my stovetop to shame at home. Kind of takes a little more time to heat up. All right, so I'm just going to continually make sure there are no lumps of flour here. It does help to cook those. You can use a whisk if you'd like. I think the fork gives you a lot of mobility there. Okay, all right. So now what you need to do is you're going to add your mustard, sugar, and your milk. Okay, so we have a 1/3 cup of milk. Go ahead and pour into there. And the sugar, as I said, 1/2 cup. That's what I'm going to go for and suggest, because I am aware of the fact that I, generally speaking, like things that are less sweet than the average person. So let's take and put, I don't want to, let's see here. Approximately. Again, this is to taste. You've got your sugar. Okay, all right. You can also add a pinch of salt. Not on the recipe, but I think that might also help a bit. Now, your dry mustard, you need, let's see here, we need about a 1/4 cup of this. So, let's get this here. Dry mustard, 1/4 cup. Okay, it's a little wet on the bottom. We go a little bit more there. You can also use Coleman's. It has quite the bite. So I would say maybe use slightly less than a fourth, but this gives it a very nice mustardy bite to it. This is a little less stringent, I guess I would say. Just your average store-bought ground mustard. Go back to your fork. Okay. As you can see, I'm just going to mix, mix, mix. Okay. Now this, this is why you have to cook. And again, I apologize in advance. Sometimes when you're doing things in a studio, they don't exactly perform the way you'd like. And I'm saying this because this is not quite the thickness that I want, so it just needs to be cooked a little more. You could also add some more flour, which I believe I will do, just so I can thicken this up just slightly. Okay, so we're going to keep stirring this until you see that it is thickening. And it should bubble a little bit as it's cooking. Hopefully you have a nice view of this. You can see if you find that there are any of those stray lumps, I mean, you could sift the flour, that would be helpful. But if you do, just take your spoon and remove those. Okay, so this is definitely shaping up as it cooks or heats. I'm going to let this go just a tad bit more because we're on the finishing end here. This is when you would take a spoon or whatever you have and you want to taste. Just a little. This is not the end, but just a little. Because let's say you want it a little sweeter, this is when you would add your sugar because you'll melt the granules and that will help dissolve. Or you can add honey, brown sugar, but just your usual white processed sugar in this case is fine. All right, last but not least, guess what the missing ingredient is? It's going to be vinegar. So, take your vinegar here. You need a 1/4 cup. That's a little more than a 1/4. Let's see here. All right. So you can see here. Pour that in. Give it a stir. A little more. And this is exactly what you want to see. It's starting to get just the right consistency. Take another taste. Make sure that you find it's what you're looking for. And then when you're perfectly satisfied with the flavor and you don't find the mustard too overwhelming or the vinegar, the combination thereof, you're pretty much ready to find a container. Nice glass jar works really well. You can see that this recipe makes a pretty decent portion here. And this is pretty much it. Once you have refrigerated it, as I say, this is this nice consistency that you have. It'll have, based on how much you sweetened it, it will have that kind of a hot, sweet, mustardy taste. And let's just put this aside here. And then you have your pretzel bites all ready for pretty much any time, quite honestly. But something good to have in your, I guess people don't use the word wheelhouse anymore, but I think the more you experiment with recipes of all kinds, whether it's something that's really complicated that goes through some serious techniques, that's good, as well as having something simple that achieves a slightly similar effect, but it's easy to put together. Kids love these, if I didn't already say. Coming out of the oven when they're warm, they're so perfect, but they would obviously keep for a few days if you wrap them. So, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you're having a good day and a good season, and you're taking care of yourselves and staying healthy. Thank you, Culpeper Media. We really appreciate it. I certainly thank everyone at Culpeper County Parks and Rec. Love my job. It's great. And keep in touch with us. Make sure you look for the phone number, the email, and if you have any questions, feel free to give us a call. Let us know if we can clarify. And as we are sometimes prone to say, stay crafty.